Oh, you didn't know? Your ass better call somebody!
The energy revealed. Brooklyn to Queens, reppin' both hoods. Rob and CP, keep it fire misunderstood. Cheer 'em all loud, let the anthem flow. Mets fans unite at the pregame show. From city stand lights to the skyline greens, it's the heartbeat of Queens, the craziest dreams. Rob hype on the mic, CP's the fire spark. Together they ignite, voices like the park. Fans dripped in jerseys, legacy bold. The Metropolitan story forever told. Turnstile spinning, the crowd floods the gates. This is family, no time for debates. Crack of the Batman, the roar never fades. Queens in the blood, it's how champions are made. Cheer 'em all loud, let the anthem flow. Mets fans unite at the pregame show. From city stand lights to the skyline gleams, it's the heartbeat of Queens, the craziest dreams. 7-line swagger, vibes electric and wild. Mets legacy golden since I was a child. Orange crushed skies, let the battle ignite. Ride for the home team till the last fight.
What's up, Mets fans? Welcome back to another amazing Mets pregame show here on this lovely Saturday. We have a 4 o'clock start against the Washington Nationals in Game 2 of this series between the Mets and the Nationals at home at Citi Field, which is the last home series of this lovely regular season here in 2025. We'll be kind of recapping and getting some of Rob's thoughts about yesterday's game, as well as previewing the lineups and pitching matchup that we have going on between these two teams. And before we fully get into it, Rob, how you doing?
Doing good, doing good. I'm glad we got that win. It wasn't exactly how we drew it up, but we'll take the win any way we can with now 8 games to go. But yeah, listen, win this series today, man, and just get it done by any means necessary. Listen, you pulled one out yesterday. It wasn't looking good early, but you know what? You got your best pitcher on the mound today, so it's looking good for the Mets, hopefully.
Yeah, absolutely. I know that you weren't part of the post game. You couldn't make it on with Nick and myself, and we kind of broke down that ugly win for the Mets because the offense just absolutely showed up, scoring another game where they score upwards of 12 runs, 10 plus runs, whatever it is. And this offense is just on a roll right now. But, we were talking about the ins and outs of yesterday's game. We had to talk about Jose Siri, and it was just so fitting that that type of game from Siri happened because we were talking about Tyrone Taylor in the pregame. We were talking about this center field trio between Mullins, Taylor, and Siri, and how you and the Mets probably will only be rostering 2 of the 3 in the postseason. And I think that just put the nail in the coffin for Jose Siri's chances at a postseason roster spot with this Mets team should they get there. So the Mets had to deal with that. Poor Brandon Sproat had to deal with that, although he did have some command issues with a couple of walks in that third inning when the Nationals scored, 4 runs. A fly ball that Jose Siri, if you're bringing him in as a star defender out in center field, he should be tracking that ball down. It hit his glove, and they actually reversed the ruling. At first, they labeled it a error. And then the next half inning, the official scorekeeper ruled it a base hit, which put a couple of more earned runs on the board on Brandon Sproat's, resume for the overall statistics. Not that it matters, but, there's a lot of things that we could talk about from last night before we fully get into today's game. Mendoza's decision to kind of mimic Tong's last outing and taking Brandon Sproat out after only 71 pitches and putting Huascar Brazaban in, who gave up 2 immediate runs, and they had to put Rayleigh back into that game a little bit earlier than they probably wanted to. The offense in general, Juan Soto, new career high in home runs. I mean, give me your, brief synopsis of thoughts and opinions of the overall game. Yes, it was sloppy, but what did you make of Brandon Sproat, Mendoza's decision, the bullpen, all of it?
Yeah, you talked about his location. He was a little off yesterday with Brendan Sproat, and that's okay. Like, he's going to have a game like that. He's not going to be perfect. And, it's a little shocking because, we expect these guys to do so much more. But again, Jose Siri did not help the cause. I mean, my God. I mean, you can't catch a fly ball. Everything that can go wrong for a player in a game went wrong for Jose Siri, and that's unfortunate. But the Mets did bounce back the way they were supposed to. We talked about the offense in a pregame yesterday. What we believe this offense is supposed to drive this team, and it did yesterday. And I didn't like the fact that Sproke had taken out early with, what was it, 72, 73 pitches. I didn't like that, but what is, I guess the point is, we were talking about the bullpen and what is Mendoza and the guys are trying to do, the front office trying to do with this bullpen. I think they're trying to get this bullpen set up for the playoffs. I know that's a little crazy to think about, because Brosman came in and kind of, got a couple of runs, and it was still a close game at the time. And you get a little worried. You're like, all right, here we go again. We got to use 5-6 guys, but you got 8 games to go. You got to figure out who's going to be in this bullpen when and if the Mets make the playoffs. You have to have a good foundation, a good idea when it comes to your bullpen. And I think they are worried about Brandon Sproat's innings. We talked about it a couple of weeks ago in regards to why they haven't brought him up and why they thought they were going to put him in the bullpen when they tried that out, and that failed. They're worried about his innings probably more than Tong and McLean. So it's probably about innings. It's probably about finding the trusted guys in the bullpen going forward over the next week or so before the playoffs starts. Because you got to know. You can't just be throwing guys out there and say, all right, this is our bullpen roster, and then, you're stuck. So I think overall, I like the offense bouncing back, right? Because I know everybody, if you're in group chats, if you're on social media, it was going crazy when the Nationals were up 4-1. Like, it was looking so bad, and I'm like, oh man, I'm glad I'm not on the post game. Chris got to deal with that today, not me. But but you know what? The offense came alive. All the guys that we wanted to see do the job are doing the job. Look at the numbers. It's insane. 3 for 4 for Lindor, 2 for 3 with Soto, Alonso 2 for 4. Those are your guys right there. Look, it's all the crooked numbers are all up on top. That's how you win. That's how this offense drives. This is how this offense drives this team to where it should be. And again, the Mets had to score at least 7 runs yesterday to win. So once again, we talked about the low scoring games, the close games. Mets have a hard time winning those games. We're not going to score 12 runs all the time. We got to be careful with giving up so many goddamn runs. That is still concerning to me with these 8 games left to go. We could still win games. We could still lose games, obviously. But we can win games in this fashion, and we're probably going to have to win these games like this for the remainder of the season. I don't think you're going to win a lot of 2-1 games. I don't think that this pitching staff in general as a whole is going to be good enough to do that these last couple of games. Now, when it comes to the playoffs, it's always a crapshoot. You don't know. But, it's nice to see the offense bounce back after the couple of errors and, the Nationals going up 4-1. It was nice that they bounced back basically right away. So good signs there. But the pitching is still concerning. But I do like Helsley. He's starting to figure it out a little bit. You see the movement of his fastball. You could see the confidence on the mound that you did not see since he basically came to the New York Mets. So that's a good sign as well, because we said it how many times, Chris? Helsley is going to be in these spots. He's going to be in these type of games. They didn't trade for him to be one of the top trade acquisitions to really help this bullpen as a setup guy. He is going to be a part of this. Believe it or not, when there's big moments in these last few games, he's going to pitch them. And because they have to trust somebody. There's not a lot of guys we can trust in this bullpen. And it was nice to see all these guys get used yesterday. And it's kind of looking like it's Helsley trying to slowly get in that circle of trust. And we know about Tyler Rogers. We know about Brooks Raley. So Stanek was pretty decent in this outing as well. Listen, it was a good win. I don't like the way we won, but you can't be picky at this point now. You win another game 12-6, nobody's going to complain about it. But overall, Sproat, I think, got the raw end of the stick there when it comes to series terrible play. And like you said, Chris, he was off just a tad. But again, what is it? Third start? It's you're going to get something like that. What you want to see him is in his next start bounce back and fix whatever was the problem in this game.
Yeah, I agree. And I think the biggest thing also that we didn't mention so far, but we did touch upon it in the post game that I noticed with Brandon Sproat is that, yeah, he got pulled a little bit prematurely. The consistency with Carlos Mendoza and doing this to the young pitchers, I mean, that's going to have to be something where I don't think he can afford to do that, really. If a guy like Tong or Sproat if they're going well, they at least deserve to go back out there for a couple of batters, the first batter, the second batter in the next inning. But I do agree with you at that point in the game. I see where he's coming from and trying to understand how the rest of the game is going to play out and try to get some of these guys some work, especially a guy like Stanek and Helsley, who posted some zeros yesterday. So, that is going to be a huge thing too. And the Mets are trying to juggle something that's just like very difficult right now in trying to get the starters ramped up and ready for the postseason, but also because they've been struggling and also a struggling bullpen trying to get ramped up and stay fresh. Now, like I said, I'll go back to this very topic once more. If you have the amount of arms, especially if Kodai Senga comes up, we don't know if he's actually going to come up or not, or when he's going to come up, or if he's going to be on the postseason roster. I'm assuming that he is. I think the best educated guess is that he is because the Mets did it with him last year too. So if things remain consistent, Kodai Senga will be appearing for the Mets in the postseason in some sort of capacity. But when you have that many starters, let's say you have 7 starters in a 3-game series, in a potential wild card series, you can shorten the game a little bit by not needing to use some of your C tier guys in the bullpen. And you use the tandems, the tag teams, like we like to call it, and then you go straight to your A guys in the bullpen, which is probably Rayleigh, Rogers, and Diaz at this very moment. So, but when you get to a divisional series, a championship series, you're going to need, it's all hands on deck because you're going to need to obviously lengthen the rotation, and more of these bullpen guys are going to need to contribute as well. So I'm sure the Mets, they shouldn't be looking forward to that because you need to win what's in front of you. First of all, you need to get in, and then you need to take the wild card series. But I'm sure they're thinking about all of this in the road ahead. But the one thing that I did like yesterday is that Brandon Sproat, even after that inning didn't go his way, he was scheduled to get out of that inning still being a 2-1 lead for the Nationals instead of a 4-1 lead. Like he had the ability to get out of it because he had a huge double play after getting first and second, nobody out. It was a huge double play that he got. CJ Abrams hit the RBI double, and then thereafter, that should have been the end of the inning. But of course, we know what happened with Siri, etc. That wasn't the case. But I like that the next inning that he came back out, it seemed like he wasn't that flustered. It seemed like he was ready to go out there, post a zero. He saw his offense in the bottom half of the inning gain a run back to make it 4-2. He said, this offense, with the way that it's rolling, is going to come back in this game. All I need to do is post another zero. That's what he did. And then Alvarez, very shortly after that, tied up the ball game at 4 apiece with a double down the line. So, with these young pitchers, especially, I agree with you that they're going to have hiccups. They're going to have innings like that where they kind of lose command and control. You'd hope they limit it moving down, the stretch of this season because the Mets really can't afford it, but it's going to happen. It's all about how you not let it snowball and roll over into the next inning. And also, like you said, the next outing as well is what we're, wanting to watch from McLean, Tong, and Brandon Sproat. So definitely good point there. All right, let's talk about, and by the way, we appreciate you all being here on this lovely Saturday afternoon. As always, please hit the thumbs up buttons. This is being streamed to both Rob and my YouTube channel. Make sure you hit the thumbs up buttons on both if you're subscribed to both, if you're not subscribed to both channels. And as always, we want to hear what you all have to say. Keep dropping the live chat comments. 8 games to go. This is game 155, Rob. It is now or never. It is do or die time. And this is the point of the season, right? I know that the season is long. Us diehard fans like you and I and a lot of people in this chat that have been here for the majority of the season, right? We watch all these games, schedule permitting, right? Life happens, stuff gets in the way. But for the most part, we watch a good amount of these games. But for other fans that are kind of like tapped into other things, doing something else with their summer, traveling, whatever, that's okay, right? The Mets aren't like life, so to speak. Other people have plans and vacations and stuff, but this is when people start to get excited about this season because everything's taking form. You know who's actually contending, you know who's not in it anymore, and these games are valuable. Every single one of these games are valuable. Now, I'd be lying to you if I told you that, I wish the Mets were in a position where they already clinched and they weren't really playing for that much, but this just makes it all the more exciting. So hopefully the Mets are up to the task and they have Nolan McLean, the best pitcher, the best option. I don't want to jinx him, so I will knock on wood, but he's been absolutely fantastic ever since getting the call from AAA, and he is looking to take this series for the New York Mets. And you're right. If the Mets ended up losing yesterday's game, I know we talked about, series win versus sweep, and I've been on the the bandwagon, the notion that this is a must sweep series for the Mets. I was about to go off on the Mets if they had lost that game because you cannot afford to lose any of these games against the Nationals, especially given who you have coming up in the Chicago Cubs, who didn't do their job last night against the Reds for our sake. So the Reds are still 2 games back. I believe the Diamondbacks did lose. So now the Mets are up 3 on the Diamondbacks and they're up 4 on the Giants. So we're starting to see a little bit of shifting in, at one point we thought the Diamondbacks could make a serious run, but now it's the Reds. So we got game 155 today. This is the lineup from Lindor, batting leadoff, of course, playing shortstop, all the way down to Cedric Mullins back in the lineup. The good news is yesterday, Tyrone Taylor also did start a rehab assignment, if I'm not mistaken. So he's on the fast track to rejoin this team. And that is going to be awesome because then we don't have to see Cedric Mullins on an everyday basis. Nothing against Cedric Mullins. I'd just like to see Tyrone Taylor over him. I think we had that discussion already. But what do you make of this game? Some keys to victory. I think it starts with Nolan McLean, man. I mean, Cade Cavalli, former first-round pick. I mean, he has some talent, but like we always say, and yesterday with Alvarez, the lefty for the Nationals, who actually looked pretty good early on in the game, outside of that Pete Alonso, I guess, bloop double and the misplay by Dylan Cruz in right field to bring Lindor all the way around from first, he looked pretty good. But this offense for the Mets, no matter what the personnel is, and we said this about Jose Siri yesterday, if we're actually complaining about Jose Siri, batting in defensive side, right? Batting in the 9th spot. And that's what fans think the difference of the Mets scoring runs versus not scoring runs is going to be, then that means this offense isn't producing at even half of its peak. But the thing is that no matter who is batting 9, no matter, who's batting 8, really the bottom 3 right now with the way that Lindor, Soto, and Alonso are going, and even Brandon Nimmo, it doesn't really matter what combination you put down there in 7, 8, 9. Of course, you always want to strengthen every part of your lineup, but it should not come down to that. And I think that's something that you've also echoed that very sentiment for quite some time. So immediate thoughts about this game today and what you're looking for out of this team.
It's kind of the same concept, right? Who cares about Mullins batting 9th? If we're going to be talking about Mullins on the post game in regards to him not doing the job or him, getting stuck with all the runners on base and not coming through, then the guys before him didn't do the job either. I think it's the same simple concept, right? Pitch well, score some runs. Nolan McLean is your ace. He needs to go out there. And we talked about yesterday when, like, hey, 3 runs or less, we'll take 2 runs less, but 3 runs or less. Obviously that didn't happen. But for Nolan McLean, when you got portrayed now or put in that spot of ace, we're expecting 6 innings, 2 runs. I think that should be something that every Met fan should be talking about in regards to what we need to get from Nolan McLean. He's in the shit now, so to speak. That's what he was putting in, and he's doing great. And I think that he pitches well. Give me 6 innings, 2 runs, and the Mets continue to score. Again, the top of the guys are doing the job right now. I expect that the Mets score 5 runs at least in this game, they'll win. Easily. And that's the way I feel. I like the lineup. Again, Marte again DHing. I know, no Vientos, which is interesting. And again, this is going to be such a crazy dynamic. I know we're talking about later on, but it's weird. It was 2 out of the last 3 games, Vientos didn't play. So, he kind of is cooling off a little bit as well. Hasn't been the same guy he was when he was right out a couple of weeks ago. And Marte, again, the veteran presence, man. I'm telling you, I would not be shocked if you see Marte game 1 playoffs in the lineup, especially if he's hitting. But I like the lineup. I would like to get Mullins going. I really would like to get Mullins going. I still feel like there's another level to Mullins offensively that we still haven't seen yet. He's a professional guy, right? He doesn't bitch, he doesn't moan. He goes out there, he hustles. He never not hustles, which is a good sign. I would like to get him going because it seems like he is a team guy, right? He does seem like he gets along good with those guys in the dugout. I just hope Mullins can get going offensively a little bit because if Mullins can get going, I mean, who do you want to face in his lineup? Every one of these guys are a hard out in this lineup. I like the lineup. Score some damn runs, keep it going, and Nolan McLean, do what you've been doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And as it pertains to a little bit of a scouting report about Cade Cavalli, I always try to put something in there about the opposing team starting pitcher. I mean, I don't think we've seen much of him this year at the major league level. I think he's got around just under 40 innings under his belt for the Washington Nationals. He's got like a 4+ ERA. Again, former first round pick for them. I think he was like 22nd overall back in 2020. But he's coming back from Tommy John surgery, or he did come back from Tommy John surgery in the middle of last year in 2024. And I saw an article talking about how he needed to quote unquote relearn his pitches, and he's still trying to ramp up, etc. So with the lack of sample size at the major league level, obviously that means something for Cade Cavalli in this 2025 season, but the talent is there. He does throw hard. I mean, he does have a fastball. It's 97 and a half, according to Baseball Savant. So he's has some velocity, but I was actually shocked when you have 97 in your back pocket. That is probably going to be your most utilized pitch, you would think, but his most utilized pitch, and it hasn't been a good one in terms of the overall numbers of opposing batters, is actually a knuckle curveball. So that's a very interesting dynamic because you don't really see too many predominant pitchers that throw that knuckle curve. So we'll see how he decides to attack this Mets lineup. But I would have to think that any pitcher going up against this Mets lineup in this, the rest of the way, maybe minus the Cubs. I mean, I guess none of these teams have anything to play for, the Nationals, Marlins, and the Cubs, but it's going to be a very tough task. And these pitchers know this because we said it in the pregame yesterday. I said in the pregame yesterday, all of these guys, Cade Cavalli today, Alvarez yesterday. I'm sure whoever's going for the Nationals, I don't know. I don't know the look ahead about what the pitcher matchup is tomorrow, but whoever's throwing for them tomorrow, they're probably fighting for roster spots on the 2026 Washington Nationals roster. So that chip is on their shoulder. But the Mets cannot let up the pressure, be relentless. And even the booth and Ron was talking about the biggest key to victory and what has been a huge key to success for the New York Mets over the past couple of weeks is getting on top early and putting that pressure on the opposing starters early. They did that yesterday by scoring the first run. And then we all know what happened. The Nationals retook the lead with a 4-1 lead, and the Mets got it back. And I think that's something to speak for. This Mets team is never really out of it, but you'd like to not be playing from behind. I had the worst feeling in the pit of my stomach, knowing that I was going to be going on the post game and seeing the Nationals get out to a 4-1 lead. And I was like, oh boy, I know the Mets are not out of it in this game, but it just doesn't give you a good feeling. And so the offense had to go to work, and they did, but you don't want to be playing from behind, especially against these better teams. The Nationals made a lot of mistakes yesterday defensively. As sloppy as the Mets were, defensively, especially Siri and Soto not backing up that one ball and the Brandon Sproat errant throw. The Nationals were as sloppy, if not even sloppier, especially Dylan Cruz out in right field, misjudging a couple of balls. So against better teams, you're not going to be gifted those types of mistakes. And I think that has kind of saved the Mets just a little bit. And of course, we'll never complain. Yeah, was it the way that, we wanted the Mets to win yesterday? Absolutely not. We'd rather have a little bit more of a dominating performance, but we're not going to complain with a win at this point of the season when all the Mets need to do and have to do is win. So that's kind of my take on that. Get up to an early lead in this game, and the rest will take care of itself. How are you feeling, Rob, overall about the state of this team? I mean, like, what's your confidence confidence level? I just want to kind of take a step back and kind of assess that. What is your confidence level in this team? Not even in this game, because this game is this game, but I'm talking about in the overall landscape. We're looking at 8 games left to play. It'll be 7 after today. The Mets have a 2 game advantage over the Cincinnati Reds. I believe they are kicking off at 6:40 tonight against the Cubs again. And you have the Diamondbacks there in striking distance. I think the Giants, that's a little bit of an it never say never, but like 4 games back with 8 left to play would be an absolute miracle for them. So it doesn't really feel good. I'm confident. I'm confident. I've said this for weeks now. I told you all to clip, way back when I said the Mets are going to make the playoffs. There's no way that a team like the Reds catches them. But in the back of my head, I'm like, okay, the only team that the Mets officially don't hold the tiebreaker over is the Reds, and they're the ones that are closest right now with 8 left to play. So where's your head at with this team and the state of this team moving forward?
Oh, buckle up. I'm on the roller coaster because, again, do we really think this is going to be easy? It's not. It's not even just us winning. It's with the Reds too. And again, we're 2 games ahead of them. And if you really just quickly do the Mets with 8 games to go, let's say the Mets go 5-3, right? Nothing special, right? 2 games over 500 over the last 8 games, 5-3. Just do quick math. What do the Reds have to do just to tie us? They have to go 7-1 in their last 8 games. That's basically it, right? That's the number right there. If they go 7-1 and we go 5-3, they make the playoffs over us with a tiebreaker. So are they going to go 7-1? Are they good enough to go 7-1? And are the Mets, a little bit above average to go 5-3? I think so. Put it this way: you win each series over the next 3 series. You win one of these 2 games against the Nationals. You win 2 against the Cubs. You win 2 against the Marlins. If you do the math, right, that's 5 more games. That would be 5-3 right there. I think that is almost near impossible. Now, nothing's impossible, but it's crazy to think if the Reds can go 7-1, if the Mets go 5-3. The Mets could have done more. Again, we talk about all the games the prior months, but I just feel like go 5-3, which is not a lot to ask for when you got 2 bad teams in the Nationals and the Marlins. And yes, it would be a lot easier if you sweep one of these teams. If you sweep the Nationals or the Marlins, now all you got to do is win one more series, and you're kind of right there with the 5 wins. And whatever else you get, guess what? I think you automatically, if you win 6 games, I think it's game over. Because they have to go 8-0 just to tie you. And I don't think that's going to happen. Again, crazier things have happened. They are playing Pittsburgh, and I'm not sure their last two series of the last series of the year. After they finished the Cubs, they got Pittsburgh. I don't know who they have after that. I just looked at it and then I forgot. But let me just double check really quick. Milwaukee might be playing for the top record, so they might be playing for something. Now again, they're going to have most likely. They're trying to get they're both going to have to buy them and the Phillies, but they want the best record. But I doubt they're going to pitch their best guys, because if they do get the best record, they'll have home for the advantage to out, but they'll both have the buy. So they could throw their top guys if they wanted to against Cincinnati. But again, just do the quick math. We win today. We need 3 more wins out of 6. That's all we need. That's all we need. We got to go 500. That's all we need. Because I don't believe that they're going to go 7-1. And again, I think the Cubs, they played them well yesterday. Unfortunately, the Reds are desperate. I'm not confident in the New York Mets. I'm just not. I don't trust this team. I mean, how can you be when they played well over 500 for 3 months? We know the reason why, or most of the reason why they were that bad. But you can't change the past. All you can do is win the games in front of you. And the Mets have a golden opportunity here, right? They're not facing the hardest teams in the world here. The Cubs are not going to have nothing to play for. The Nationals suck. The Marlins suck. Just go out there and do your job. You have your playoffs. The playoffs are in your hands. If you take care of your own business, it doesn't matter what the Reds do. And let's hope they start that again today and continue going forward over the last 8 games.
Yeah, I am kind of looking ahead at that Cubs series and just seeing the pitching matchups, and Game one is not going to be easy because you got David Peterson, who's just struggling immensely, and you got
Yep.
Cade Horton for them over there, who's got a
Mhm.
2.66 ERA. It's a little bit of a look ahead. I mean, of course, the Mets need to win this series, if not sweep it here against the Nationals before we even worry about Chicago. But that Cubs series. So essentially, what you're saying with 8 left to play, from what I'm deducing here, is that you need to win every single series, or you can sweep the National Series and then afford a series loss to, either the Cubs or the Marlins to get to that 6 number that you have in the last 8 games. Or did you say 5? Is it 5 or 6 that you'd like to see?
5
Well,
wins.
of course 6, but like we'd all like to see 6 over 5. But I'm
Yeah.
just saying like the minimum.
Yeah. The minimum's 5. If it's
Okay.
4, I mean, you're really pushing here. You're hoping that Cincinnati's got to lose a couple more games. But again,
Yeah.
Cincinnati can't afford to lose more than 3. If they lose 3 out of the next 8, that's it. They're done. Like, unless the Mets go 1-7, which again, you never know. But that's basically what's going to happen. Like, they got to play, 4 or 5. They got to go 5 or 6 games or 7 games over 500 over this stretch, even, to really give themselves a really good chance. And that's if the Mets lose more than 3 games. If the Mets lose more than 3 games, they just got to win 6 out of. They still got to go 6-2. The Mets can lose 4 games, and the Reds can win 6 games, and that's the tiebreaker. They'll win. So again, it's a tough task. Like the Mets, let's be honest, the Mets have to choke for the Reds to make the playoffs here. So just don't lose 4 games. If you lose 4 games, you're looking for trouble. And the Reds still have to go 6-2. So again, anything less than that, they're pretty much in trouble. If the Mets just go, lose only 3 games, they should be pretty good in a good spot.
It's almost like I've heard this before. Win and you're in, right? And that the Mets control. I wonder who said this, that the Mets control their own playoff destiny. I wonder who said that, right? I mean, it's not like we've been up here telling, everybody that for the past couple of weeks. I'm sure everybody in this fan base knows that. But, the biggest, I think, threat, and I said this back when I made the bold statement of the Mets will make the playoffs in the wild card because I don't see anybody behind them being a serious threat. The biggest threat to the New York Mets is the New York Mets. They beat themselves. That's the way that the Reds will get into the playoffs over them. That's just the bottom line. The Mets do have to choke for the Reds to get into the playoffs. The Mets have to do it to themselves. And we're just hoping that this team has enough mental toughness to just toughen out the last 8 games of this season. It's a grueling season. Everyone's got to play 162, though. It's not like the Mets are the only team playing 162. So this is where we see like these players, this core. You talk about the core, you've talked about the core ever since 2023. And, if the Mets can truly win with these guys, if the Mets can win with these guys, it's going to start by showing this fan base and this front office when they have to make tough decisions this offseason to keep this core together by bringing back a guy like Pete Alonso. If it's worth it to do that, and I think the only way, listen, if the Mets miss the playoffs, Pete Alonso's not coming back. Whether it's his decision or not, I'm talking about from David Stearns' standpoint, I think there's going to be a shakeup. Whether you agree with it, whether you think that's the proper shakeup or not, I think that would be 100%. Now, even if the Mets make the playoffs, I'm still a little bit kind of in doubt that David Stearns is going to dish out that kind of money for Pete Alonso, given the season that he's had. But we'll cross that bridge when we get there. I don't want to overtake this stream by talking about that. But I'm just saying, when you take a look at this core, since you put it together, and this is excluding Juan Soto because this is only his first year as a New York Met. We're talking about, and we've been talking about Lindor, Alonso, Nimmo. Maybe you can throw in Jeff McNeil into that conversation. Okay, whatever. But if this core can win and get this organization to a championship, if they can't outlast the Reds in 8 games, I don't think that there's confidence in any of us that they can deliver a championship in future years to come. So why wouldn't there be a shakeup, after that? So that's my thoughts and opinions on that, Rob. I mean, I know you've been talking about this core probably, and you've been drilling this point home more so than me over the past couple of seasons because I've been always in the camp of we gotta trust in these guys. Like, I think that these guys can win us something, but it would be very disheartening to see not only from the fan base, because screw what the fans and us fans think, right? But from the front office, David Stearns, that is like trying to see if he should bring back Pete Alonso. That's kind of a bad look on the core if they miss the playoffs in this year. Now, let's be honest, it wouldn't be completely their fault, though, because the pitching has been that bad. And really, I don't consider any of these pitchers as part of the Mets core that has been here over the past couple of years. You will have a core moving forward of pitchers, right? Except for maybe like David Peterson, who's been the one guy that's been here. Manaea was here last year only. Clay Holmes just joined, and you got the 3 rookies as well. I guess Kodai Senga, right? But we know that he's not even a factor right now. So just what do you make of that, of the state of this core moving into in the scenario that they make the playoffs and just the offseason landscape? I know people don't want to talk about the offseason. We have a game today. We want to focus on that. But I do think that it's imperative to understand that there's a lot at stake here in terms of the cohesiveness of keeping this team together from the front office's point of view based on the result of what happens here over the last 8 games.
Yeah, I mean, in general, all the years we talked about the coach, let's go back to last year. What do people talk about? They talk about Grimace. They talk about OMG. They talk about JD Martinez, keeping his team together with Jose Iglesias. Where do you hear the Pete Alonso name? Where do you hear the Brandon Nimmo name? Let's be honest. Before Lindor was, MVP candidate, that was basically it. It was everybody else, right? It was guys like, Jose Quintana. They were talking about Brandon Nimmo and Pete Alonso not doing what they're supposed to do basically the whole season. Obviously, the playoffs was a different story, but that's the problem. And at some point, and again, Pete Alonso had the opportunity a couple of years ago to sign an extension. He did not. So that's on him for not being here long term. Not the Mets' fault, right? Why do Mets have to overpay for a guy that no other team is overpaying for? Like, that's what you have to understand. It's not just about the New York Mets. Pete Alonso had the opportunity a couple of years ago to sign an extension. He did not. So it's not the Mets' fault that they went out and got Juan Soto. It's not the Mets' fault that they paid Brandon Nimmo. Pete Alonso had that opportunity. He did not take it. That's on Pete Alonso. And you know what? It's unfortunate if Pete Alonso doesn't get the contract he's looking for from the New York Mets. It's not about who has the deep pockets or anything like that. The fact of the matter is, if the Mets don't win the World Series, and I'm going to put that out there, the Mets don't make the or win the World Series, how many more times are you going to continue with this core? And because if you sign Pete Alonso, you are stuck with Brandon Nimmo, Pete Alonso, Francisco Lindor, and Juan Soto for the foreseeable future, probably the rest of their careers. Maybe Jeff McNeil will be the change. Is that enough to change the core? I don't think so. And again, that's an off-season conversation to have, but you have to understand that you can't keep on just going through the motions and throwing the same guys back again, the same core guys, not the guys that are batting 7th or 8th, the core guys. If the core guys are still losing, because the end goal should be World Series. It's great making the playoffs 3 out of the 4 years, but does anybody care? Does anybody talk about 2022? How successful it was? No. Why? Because we got embarrassed. We choked at the end of the year, and we got embarrassed in the wild card series. Who was a part of that? Brandon Nimmo and Pete Alonso. That was their team. Same thing for 2023. Terrible year. Everybody wants to say Pete Alonso's the face of the franchise, but when things go bad, now it's Lindor's team. Now it's Soto's team. You can't have it both ways. Either it's Pete Alonso's team or it's not his team. And unfortunately, I'm sorry.
Do you want Pete Alonso back in a Mets uniform? I guess I'll just ask you that straight up.
I think he fits this team better than any other team, but I'm not giving him an outrageous contract. I'm not going to give him more than 5 years. I'm probably pushing 5 years, to be quite honest with you. And again, people only look at the numbers. Like, how many years have we lost with him putting up those numbers? Right? It's not. I'm not saying he is the only or part of. He's part of the problem. Again, you can also say that we made the playoffs if we make the playoffs this year, 3 out of 4 years, which is nice. But the goal isn't just to make the playoffs. The goal is to win a World Series. That's why when David Stearns talks about sustained success, I hate that. I hate those two words, because sustained success is exactly what he wants you to believe. is, oh, just make the playoffs year after year, which is nice. Again, Met fans are not used to that, and they will probably, trip over themselves when they hear that. But the goal is to win the World Series. At some point, that's going to get stale. Making the playoffs and losing year after year is going to get stale. And people are going to question, when are you going to win a World Series? So is Pete Alonso a bad player? Of course not, right? But what Met fans make him out to be compared to what the league compares him to be is completely two sides of the spectrum. Again, Pete Alonso was he was the best first baseman available on the market at the age of 29 to 30. Not one team gave him a long-term deal or even a decent deal. There's a reason why the Mets waited. David Stearns had that whole contract situation. He had the pulse of everything going around with Pete Alonso.
Well,
So
Pete Alonso also had an abysmal year last year.
he did. But at the same time, is there going to be teams that are going to give him 6-7 years? Is it possible? Because if it is,
I think so.
then you know
I
what?
think there's a team that would do it.
Then that's when the Mets really have to have a conversation, because if you sign Pete Alonso, you're stuck with this core for the rest of time. There is no going back from this core. It is what it
But
is.
you know what though? But you know what though? Wouldn't you argue? At least I would argue that the quote unquote sustained success definition would fit perfectly when you look at what Pete Alonso is doing alongside Juan Soto and vice versa right now.
Sure.
Wouldn't you like to see that duo? Because I honestly think if this season fails, I know the offense started off really slow. I understand that, but this season fails because of David Stearns' lack of ability to get competent pitching and having to rely on the rookies last minute. I don't think it fails because of Pete Alonso. That it sure as hell doesn't, fail because what's his face? Soto didn't show up because he's showing up. You can't blame Lindor. Nimmo has been kind of like he's got good numbers. You can't really blame Nimmo, although I think that contract we both agree is kind of egregious and the Mets are stuck with it, unfortunately. But I have a hard time blaming the offense if this season goes awry. Unfortunately, I think that Pete Alonso in the front office perspective, and maybe for the same reasons that you're giving right now, would be kind of like this scapegoat. But I think sustained success, if we're looking for that from a pitching perspective and getting these young rookies acclimated for the long haul on this team, at least if you give Alonso a 6-year contract because of the numbers that he posted, you get the next 6 years of the production that we're getting right now from both Juan Soto and Pete Alonso. And I think that's a really good 1-2 duo in around baseball, point blank period.
Well, all right. Let me ask you this question then: if it's between Pete Alonso and Kyle Schwarber, I know they're not playing. He's not playing first base, but again, you got Ryan Clifford in the minor leagues, and this is the problem that I have with David Stearns. Are you gonna spend the money, or are you gonna let these young kids play? Because you could sign Kyle Schwarber, who hits more home runs than Pete Alonso, who has better plate appearances a lot of the time than Pete Alonso, but he doesn't play first base. You can put Ryan Clifford in there, who's probably a 20 home run guy, and you got a 50 home run guy or 45 home run guy in Kyle Schwarber, and now he's a couple of years older. Do you do that? Like, that's the idea. Because again, they're not trading these guys. That's the problem. If you sign Pete Alonso, you better trade Ryan Clifford, because what the hell is he here for? That's the other problem. Like, again, we're going to be backlogged again like we were this year.
He could be your DH.
Who?
And then they could still be trying to Clifford, and then they could still be trying to move Mark Vientos off of Mark Vientos, because I don't think Mark Vientos has proven anything this year, really. I mean, he had a hot stretch for 2 weeks and he looked unstoppable, and everyone's saying that he was back, and I thought that he was back too. But all in all, when you take a look at this season for Mark Vientos, it really hasn't been, especially if you're getting the production that you got from Brett Beatty this season. That's what he's going to be moving forward. I think a good calculated risk, if Pete Alonso's back, then you have Clifford as a maybe a DH option, and then maybe Mark Vientos is the odd man out. I don't know. It's a lot of like, it's a merry-go-round situation.
It's a
Kyle
fascinating
Schwarber,
conversation for the offseason.
oh my! If you think that this is, I know that we're kind of annoying some people taking pregame talk of off-season talk, but if you like this conversation right now, I hope you all stick around for this off-season. Whenever this Mets season is done, regardless if they don't make the playoffs, if they lose in the wild card, if they win the World Series, I don't care, because this same conversation is still going to happen on both of our channels with videos and streams just like this right here, because there is a lot of roster uncertainty on the offensive side, I will say, driven by Pete Alonso. Pitching, I think our pitching is going to look the same, plus the addition of
I
Christian
agree.
Scott in the mix next year. I don't
Mhm.
think there's much going to change. This is going to change with the pitching, unfortunately. You'll probably see some shakeups maybe in the bullpen. You have to shake up the bullpen a little bit. Edwin Diaz is going to probably opt out, and you also have to think about bringing back Edwin Diaz. So buckle up, Mets fans. This
Oh
is
boy.
an offseason where I think the temperature of this fan base is going to go up a couple of notches, and maybe some tempers do flare within this fan base. And the Pete Alonso fans, I know you're going to rile some people up that love Pete
Oh, I
Alonso,
can't
because
wait.
I love Pete Alonso. I love Pete Alonso. I really want him to stick around. I think he'd be a good asset alongside Juan Soto for the foreseeable future, even if it is 6 years. But you kind of have both of these sides of the argument within this fan base. The argument for giving Pete Alonso the money in the years that he wants, and the fan base, part of the fan base that I think you are in, that's like, I would love Pete Alonso back, but at the right price. And if he wants more than that, then he can walk and see what else he gets elsewhere. So it's gonna be crazy, Rob. It's gonna be actually crazy. Actually crazy.
Well, you know what they got to do? They shut up all of us, win the World Series, and then I don't think most of us care, right? The world can
Right.
end. It doesn't matter, right? Let's have our parade. Everything can happen. All that crazy stuff can go on in the world. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter
Yep.
anymore, right? We'll all be in the city partying, and I'll find my way back to New York and probably won't come back. Like that's just. Hopefully that happens. Hopefully that happens. That would be a fun stream.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the other conversation, because I see a lot of Carlos Mendoza discourse, in this fan base, and he's had a really down year from a managerial perspective. But there's a lot of reasons, and probably a big excuse of like roster turnover, that I would be willing to give him in his second year as Mets manager. I think some of the blame is kind of a little bit unwarranted at times for Mendoza. Has he had the cleanest year
No.
decision making wise? Absolutely not. We'll both be the first ones to say that, but the guy that's in charge of bringing him back or letting him go already said that he's going to be brought back, and that's just the bottom line. So I'm not really sure why this fan base is talking about Carlos Mendoza here down the end of the season. If the Mets lose and they don't make the playoffs, or if they do make the playoffs, it doesn't really matter. I don't think that's going to impact Mendoza's job status, no matter what
Yeah.
your opinion on that is, because we've already heard it from the man himself, David Stern. So final thoughts here before we get out of here. We got game 2, Nolan McLean versus Cade Cavalli, game 155. Last home series of the 2025 season for the New York Mets before they take on 6 games in a row on the road to end the season. Rob, final thoughts before we sign off until the post game later today.
Get the W today, guys. Let's win a series, and let's be talking about it on the post game about a sweep. Right? That's the whole idea right here. Again, 5 wins. 5 wins is the key here, because 5 wins guarantees that you will have a really good shot of getting that third wild card. Only because 2 games back are the Reds. The only way they can tie you is to go 7-1 in their last 8 games. So again, 5 wins total is kind of the minimum of probably comfortably being in a wild card spot, because the Reds really have to play outstanding baseball, which they can. You don't want to rely on another team, but 5 wins should get it done. 6 wins is kind of put it in the books. We're in the playoffs, and then we'll be talking about a matchup. But Nolan McLean, do what you've been doing. Line up, score some runs, and hopefully we're talking about a W on the post game show, Chris. And that's it. Like, there's no more excuses for this team. Limit their mistakes, and everything will be okay.
One day at a time, must sweep series. In my humble opinion, get the job done. I want to be talking about a W, spamming some W's in the post game stream. See you all later. And hopefully this offense is up to the task. Just put up the proper amount of runs and get the win. I appreciate everyone being here on both of our channels. As always, hit the thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you all in just a couple of hours for the post game. Peace, and let's go Mets.
Let's go Mets.